Hello everyone, today I'm going to show you how I used the Attach feature in Design Space to create this three-dimensional snowflake that I designed for my Beautiful Snowflake card. Let's start with the supplies you're going to need for this project. As you can see here, I've already cut the snowflakes and a variety of papers for the design of my card. Let me tell you the measurements for each one of these. You're going to start with a card base, a piece of glacier paper cut at 5.5 by 4.25. I'm using the lighter side. A piece of 5.25 by 4-inch white daisy paper that's been embossed with a snowflake embossing folder. A piece of Holly Jolly snowflake paper cut at 1.5 inches wide. A piece of Oh My Heart striped paper cut at 1.25, and a piece of vellum for your sentiment. Now I'm going to show you how I use the Attach feature in Design Space to create each one of those three-dimensional snowflakes. The snowflake I used for my card came from the Close to My Heart Flower Market collection, so I'm going to filter out my purchased collections. I'm going to search for Flower Market, then I'm going to select that cartridge collection, search for Snowflake, and select the snowflake that I plan on using for this project. Now that I've inserted the snowflake into the canvas, I'm going to resize this snowflake to the largest size that I need, which is 4 inches. And then I'm going to zoom in to the canvas here so that you can see me add each one of those score lines that I need to create the three-dimensional snowflake. You're going to go to your shapes and choose Score Line. This score line needs to be 4 inches high, the same height as my snowflake. I'm going to select both images, then align, then center, and now that score line is right in the middle of the snowflake where I need it. The next step is to add the two diagonal score lines, so I'm just going to duplicate the score line I already have, rotate it, and then I'm just going to kind of finagle it a little bit until it's right at the diagonal that I need for this snowflake. For the third score line, I'm just going to duplicate the diagonal score line, then I'm going to flip horizontally and place it right where I need it across these 2 points on the snowflake. And now we've added all of the score lines that we need for folding this three-dimensional snowflake. I realized when I was putting my card together that I did need to remove that flower shape cut from the center of the snowflakes, or my snowflakes were not easy to place together with a 3D foam dot. So we're going to do that by using contour, removing the flower shape, and then you'll see here that that cut has been removed. The purpose of today's project was to teach you about the Attach feature. Remember on my blog I talked about that one of the reasons we use Attach is to fasten right score cut lines to an image. That's exactly what we're doing here. Let me show you what happens when we don't attach those score lines to this snowflake. When I look at my map preview, I can see these score lines are on a separate mat than the snowflake image. That means that I have not attached them. So I'm going to go back, select all, choose Attach, and now you'll see those score lines will be scored onto my snowflake cut. Now I just need to duplicate the layers, resize them, and change them to the color of the paper I'm cutting them out of. This layer is cut at 3.5 inches and will be cut from glacier cardstock. The next layer is cut at 3 inches, and I'm shading it gray for vellum. The next layer stays white and will be cut at 2.5 inches. This top layer is not going to have any score lines, so I'm going to detach the lines from the image, delete the score lines, and bring back that center flower cut using contour again, and resize the image to 2 inches, then use the color sync to change it to the same color I'm cutting from vellum. Once I've saved my project, I can preview the mats, and you can see here that on the white daisy, the vellum, and the glacier cardstock, all the score lines have been attached to those snowflake images. Now I can send it to my machine. The first thing I want to make sure that I do is install that score tool. If you have a Maker, you will be using the score blade. I have an Air 2, so I'll be using the score tool today. Your machine is going to add the score lines first before it cuts out the image. So you can see here mine is adding the score lines onto the white daisy cardstock, and then it'll start cutting out the snowflakes. You will not have score lines on your images unless you have inserted a score tool into your Explorer machine or a score wheel into your maker. I've included links below for each one of these. Don't forget to turn the dial on your Explore machine to Custom, then choose Vellum from your materials list before cutting that vellum. You're also going to want to use a light grip mat for the vellum so that it doesn't tear when removing it from the mat. Great job creating those snowflakes in Design Space. Now we're going to create the background for our card. You're going to adhere the glacier cardstock light side up, then place the embossed white daisy atop of that. Cut some chevrons into each one of the paper strips, then adhere them onto the top of the card. Now we have a base for our snowflake. The next step is to create that heat embossed sentiment on vellum. I'm going to be using the Everyday Magic January stamp of the month with the sentiment, "Be your own kind of beautiful." I felt like this was the perfect sentiment that matched a snowflake. I'm going to be using some intense black ink to stamp the sentiment onto a piece of vellum. After it's been stamped, I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle it with clear embossing powder and heat the image with a heat tool, then apply it to my card. So are you ready to start creating that three-dimensional snowflake from all these snowflake cuts you cut? Each one of these has score marks in it, which is going to make it so much easier to fold. So on this first snowflake, I'm going to fold one of the points down and use my bone folder to make the fold a little crisper. I'm going to fold this other one up using the bone folder again. The next one is going to go down again. So I'm going to continue this up, down, mountain valley fold on each one of the points of the snowflake. That's what will create the three-dimensional look once we start to assemble it. So once I've finished here, you can see I have a mountain valley fold, and it's created this three-dimensional cup-like look to the snowflake. We're going to repeat this process with each one of the snowflakes, doing the mountain valley fold on each one of the points. You're going to want to be extra careful when creating the creases in the vellum snowflake. I noticed that it was difficult to see the score lines, but once I created them, the stiffness of the vellum really added some texture and popped that snowflake up off the card. We are going to be using some 3D foam dots to assemble the snowflakes. It is for this reason that we removed each one of those flower cuts from the center of the snowflake. With the flower cuts, there would be no place for this dot to stick. I slightly rotated each one of these layers before I added them onto the next one. And you can see the foam dot on the vellum is going to be hidden by this white snowflake. So I'm just going to go here and I'm going to kind of pinch a couple of these tips to give it a little bit more of that three-dimensional look because they were flattened as I was adding the layers. And then I'm going to go ahead and add that final vellum snowflake on the top. To embellish my snowflake, I'm going to use a black shimmer brush on top of one of these wood shapes. And you can see here in the Spruce Up collection, there's a lot of fun little icons. I've chosen a small wooden snowflake, and I'm going to brush that black shimmer across the top. The black shimmer is just like ink, except it has fun little glittery bits in it. So I'm just going to add the black onto the snowflake, and then I'm going to adhere it using some Tumbo glue. So we've completed the card base, and we've completed that three-dimensional snowflake, and now I can add it to my card using some 3D foam dots. If you look at my original card, you'll be able to see that I did add a little bit of thread around the edges, and I added some of these bitty sparkles to embellish it. I want to thank you for joining me today. I hope that you enjoyed making this card and that you learned a little bit more about using the attach feature in Design Space. Please feel free to stop by my blog each week for more tutorials and to learn more about my online Cricut classes. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I can't wait to see what you create.